Welcome to the Broken System Podcast. I'm your host, Robert, and joining me is my insightful co host, Lexi. Together, we're here to uncover the flaws and challenges within our justice system, where fairness and equality often fall short.
In this podcast, we aim to delve into the complexities of our justice system and explore the experiences and perspectives of those who have been affected by its shortcomings. We'll dive deep into the stories of individuals who have faced injustice and examine the systematic issues that perpetuate the broken system.
Our goal is to bring awareness to the disparities and biases that exist within our justice system, and to inspire our listeners to take action. Through thought-provoking discussions, interviews, and analysis, we'll explore the various aspects of the broken system and seek to understand how it can be reformed.
We believe that by shining a light on these issues, we can empower our listeners to become advocates for change. We'll discuss potential solutions, highlight success stories, and provide resources for those who want to make a difference.
So whether you're a concerned citizen, a legal professional, or simply someone who wants to learn more about the flaws in our justice system, we invite you to join us on this journey. Together, let's challenge the broken system, amplify unheard voices, and work towards a more just and equitable future.
Get ready to explore the depths of our justice system like never before. This is the Broken System Podcast.
This content is not suitable for children, as it may contain material or themes that are intended for a mature audience. Additionally, it is important to emphasize that individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, and judgments should be reserved until a fair and impartial legal process has taken place.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Broken System Podcast are entirely their own and do not necessarily represent the perspectives, opinions, or positions of the hosts or contributors.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Broken System Podcast. This week, myself and Lexi talk with our good friend Ladonna Humphrey. If you don't know her, she's an award-winning writer, documentarian, investigative journalist, executive director, and an advocate for victims' families. She is the co-founder of All the Lost Girls and the True Crime Fest Northwest Arkansas, and she has two podcasts, the Deep Dark Secrets podcast and the Extinguished podcast. But she's also our friend, so we really enjoyed speaking with her. I think you guys will enjoy listening to her and getting to know her, learning more about her, and just understanding who she is and the person she is. This is probably one of my favorite episodes because honestly, it was the easiest episode that I've had to edit because it just flowed so easily and flowed so smoothly. There wasn't a lot of editing into it. So it was real easy for me this week. So I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all. I hope you're enjoying this part of our show until we get set up for our next season. We're researching that now, and we'll be coming to you with a new season, which we know is going to just blow your mind, and it'll be true to the form of season 1. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Ladonna, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, we'll get started. Thank you.
I'm Ladonna Humphrey, and I am an author, a documentarian, a filmmaker, and a private investigator. And I am also an executive director for a nonprofit. So I wear many hats, but I'm really dedicated to these cases as a victim advocate. And I think that's some of the work that I'm most proud of. But that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate you joining us tonight. And so to let everybody know how I met Ladonna was through, we were in a podcast group together, and she was very friendly and helpful with me first starting out. She was actually the first person I had help me with DJ's story. She came on and went through the 911 call because I really needed some feedback from somebody outside of what was going on and wanted somebody that hadn't heard the call before to listen to it real time and go with everything. And she was great. She came on, spent probably an hour and a half, and we've been really good friends since then. And I wanted to bring her back on this week to go through everything she's got going on and talk about her cases that she's involved with, and wanted to just introduce you guys to her fully to the audience that would remember her from our first couple episodes. So thanks, Ladonna, for joining us, and we appreciate it very much.
I'm excited to be here. One of the things that I have found to be so fascinating and also exciting in the true crime genre is that you get to meet some really amazing people who are advocating for all the right things. And the two of you are both people that I respect and admire, and I'm so glad to be friends with. But it's been a great journey because I've met some people who are just really out there making a difference for these families who have been victimized. They've lost loved ones, they're missing, they're murdered. So thank you for the work that the two of you do.
Of course,
Absolutely.
thank you. I think I might share how LaDonna and I connected because I feel like that's a really interesting path. So we've known each other, I think now for 2-ish years or so. It started, of course, from the Melissa Witt case. So I was working full time at Uncovered during at this point, and it was the first case I ever researched for Uncovered was the Melissa Witt case, and I was fascinated. There I'll have LaDonna explain a little bit about the Melissa Witt case in a moment, but it was from that interest and just connecting, and we've had a lot of similarities. We both love Taylor Swift, among some things. Um,
Yes.
and we've since partnered on lots of exciting projects, and it's just been so fun and full circle in every possible way. So, but why don't you talk a little bit about the Melissa Witt case? Because I know that's something you've really been passionate about for so long.
Yes, I've been working that case now. We're looking at a decade, and I've joked about this. You guys, if you've known me for any length of time, you will hear me joke and say that I've worked this case so long. What, you look at 10 years, there are marriages that don't last that long. And so it's a significant amount of time and a significant portion of my life. But I live about an hour away from where this case took place. And in 1994, 19-year-old Melissa Witt, basically, it looks like this. She got off work, she went to the bowling alley to go visit her mom and never made it inside. She was missing roughly 6 weeks before two trappers found a body an hour away in the Ozark National Forest. And that body turned out to be, Melissa Witt, which is really sad. And my story kind of intersects with that in the sense that I lived in Oklahoma most of my life and I moved here my 7th grade year. And when I moved here, I moved to a town called Greenwood, Arkansas, which was right outside of Fort Smith where Melissa Witt lived. And I made some lifelong friends when I lived there that year. And it turns out that some of those friends went on to be some of Melissa Witt's best friends, which that was just like an interesting intersection in our lives. And then I moved to Northwest Arkansas, got on with my life, did all kinds of things. And then I remember distinctly being in my parents' living room when the news came on that Melissa Witt was missing. You're watching the case unfold. And I just remember feeling very sad about that. She was just a couple of years younger than me and was really hoping that they would find her alive and well. And then when they didn't, I think it impacted everybody. That hadn't happened in our state before. Like this was new. This was a new thing to have happened. Fast forward to years later when I start working in an advocacy capacity for missing persons, it just naturally progressed to me working on other cases, and Melissa's is the one that really caught my attention. And I believe her case is really solvable, and I'm not going to give up until we see the guy in cuffs. So that's what I've been doing with that case for about, yeah, going on 10 years.
Wow. What would you say is the most surprising or unexpected investigative path that you've explored working this case?
Oh, goodness. I think there's a couple. I've written a couple of books about this case. And in one of the books, my first book, I talk about a woman named Sandy Jones. And basically, she's just a troublemaker. And being introduced to somebody that would provide false information to us in the case was really new to me. Maybe I was naive to that or just didn't really understand that happened in cold cases or in any case, but it does. And so I think just dealing with that and trying to navigate this path where you understand that there are people that have bad motives when it comes to a case. Not everybody's heart is pure. So that's been interesting and an unusual avenue. And I think the second thing to me and it still blows my mind even to talk about it, is just the sheer amount of, like, really bad people that lived in just a small radius from Melissa Witt back in the 90s. We're talking level 3 sex offenders, murderers, a couple of serial killers, just the worst of the worst, and it really opened my eyes to the fact that none of us knows really who our neighbors are, not really. You don't know who's in your community really, and so that's been a fascinating avenue for me to explore and to cope with.
And that's one of the things I found interesting about that is that there were so many people that could legitimately be suspects in her disappearance in that small in what I consider a small town in Arkansas. It was insane to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah, to even think about it, there were some really bad people that went on to do other really bad things. And all of those avenues had to be investigated. And one of the things that I did in this case is I reinvestigated every single lead that the police had looked at. I did that on my own. And I learned a lot and was able to contribute some things to the case, but it also opened my eyes to the sheer amount of evil that is around us. And it's definitely taught me things about taking measures for my own personal safety and for that of my family too.
I bet.
Absolutely.
What would you say from all of this? I think what's really interesting too is how that's where you were never intending to become a private investigator. It was truly through the work of the case.
Just a little bit of backstory. So I had been a part of a nonprofit for a decade and a half where we offered services to families with missing adults. And when NamUs, that's a federally funded program and database, our services weren't needed. And if anybody knows anything about nonprofits, you always want to work yourself out of a job if you can. And that's exactly what we did. And as we were closing down our nonprofit, we wanted to finish strong, so to speak. And we decided we would do a documentary. A lot of us had some experience with journalism or degrees in journalism or history with news related things. And so that was what we decided to do. And I really thought we were going to do a documentary on the plight of missing adults, but the whole entire team outvoted me. They chose the Witt case. I was passionately against it. I said, "No, they found her body. She's not missing." And I was mad that I got outvoted. I like threw a tantrum and went to the
Mhm.
Fort they sent me to Fort Smith and I was like bad attitude, feeling it on my way up there. This is not what we set out to do. And then when I got there and met all the investigators, it just changed for me. It was the passion. And so my heart going into this, once I decided that yes, we were going to embrace doing this documentary, is that we were going to do this documentary. It would take 6 months. We would get in, get out, be done, and go move on to the next thing. And that's not what happened. We got in, and I just got sucked in deeper, like getting involved in investigating, accidentally kicking up some new leads for police. That's really how it all got started. And then there was no walking away because I'm invested now. I've got to see it to the finish line.
Yeah.
Do you feel where it's at right now, and you've been so involved and so ingrained, do you feel that there's a resolution coming, or do you feel like it's going to take a lot to get that resolution?
It's not going to take a lot to get the resolution. I really thought we were going to see the resolution before the new year in 2024. That's how close we are.
Awesome.
And when that didn't happen, of course, I was a little upset, but we're still very close. Honestly, I believe we know who killed her. In all fairness, there's always a small margin of error, and maybe I'll come back to you and say, "Guys, we were wrong. It wasn't who we thought." But I don't think so. I think we've got our eyes on the guy, and he knows that we know. And I think his world is slowly falling apart, and we're counting on that because it's going to be that will help contribute to getting those cuffs on him and putting him behind bars.
And I think that's the important thing that we always have to take into consideration is you would rather it be done right and not rushed. And I know it's been a long time, but if they were to rush it, it was done, and something were to fall apart because of it being rushed, you'd be like, "I can't believe that." To me, I would rather it be a slam dunk as opposed to an iffy situation, if that makes sense.
I agree, and you definitely want it done right. You don't want a loophole because all it's gonna take is for the perp to hire a great criminal defense attorney, and then your whole case falls apart. But I'm really hoping that this I have a new book coming out, and I'm not gonna say the name of it or anything like that. I'm honestly not trying to plug the book, although I'm plugging the book, so I'm sorry. But I'm bringing that up because it comes out on April 20th. It's the 3rd in the Wit series, and I write exclusively about who I think killed her. I don't name him, of course, but I take it to the edge, to the very edge, and I'm excited to see how that unnerves this guy. I can't wait to send him a signed copy.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's important, and it's amazing that you're able to do that, and you will be a driving factor in making sure that he's brought to justice.
I hope so. I spent 7 years undercover pretending to be his friend for law enforcement. 7 years of my life. And I know who he is and what he's capable of outside of what happened to Melissa Witt. I know other people that he's hurt. I know I've spent so much time tracking down every girlfriend he had all the way back to grade school just to see who he has been in these relationships that he's had. And even if we end up being wrong and he didn't kill Melissa Witt, there are things that I know that he did that we could probably get him for because it's equally bad. So it'll be mind blowing if he doesn't turn out to be the guy, but I really think he is. Law enforcement are very convinced that it's him.
What has it been like to have to trace all of that info back for this individual who I'm assuming by now you probably know very well, but what has that experience been like to learn about who he is from strangers, really?
It's been sad. It's also been horrifying because he did some really horrible things to these women, and really what I tried to do is take the perspective that I was there to help them. And what happened is I ended up building relationships with a dozen women that he had hurt or he'd been involved in. And for their sake, I want to help them get justice in their own lives too. And so it's really come full circle because of Melissa's case, all these other women are getting some assistance and getting some help that they need. But it's been a lot for me. It's been an emotional roller coaster. It was tough. It's tough to know that he's out there and this exists, these types of things exist that he's done. And it's just been tough to try to go and track these people down while I was simultaneously pretending to be his friend because there was a level of really I did get to know him and a level of sympathy that I had for him because of his childhood, his drug use, his traumas in his life too. Not
Mhm.
so much that I would ever say I feel sorry for him. I understand why you've done the things you've done, but it's as a human I could see his brokenness and that was hard because he shared some things with me that eventually, if he doesn't figured it out now, he's gonna know I double crossed him, and that's gonna be hurtful to him, and I've have felt some guilt about that.
Yeah,
And
of course.
then people pull me back, detectives grab me by the shoulders. "He killed
Yeah.
Melissa Witt." And then it's, "Okay, it's on. Let's fight. Let's get him in.
It
Let's bring
it
him."
no matter how bad your childhood was or no matter things like that, to kill somebody is never acceptable, and that's where it gets hard to you do understand that people are traumatized because of that stuff, but it's amazing how far some people take it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's why I'll joke around and say it, but I say it jokingly, but that's why I have a good therapist,
Yes.
because for me to have to do all of these things has been hard on my psyche. It is hard to know that your phone goes off and your husband says, "Oh, who's that?" "Oh, it's a suspect in the Witt case." That's just
Somebody
not like
it's somebody that may have murdered somebody.
Yeah, I'm sorry, hon. Just can you wait a second? Can we pause this movie so I can talk to the man that I think murdered Melissa Witt? I know you'll understand. My husband has been as much a part of this journey as I have, so I joke about it, but that's really what it's been like the past 10 years. So
Yeah.
So in going from that, I know that with the Melissa Witt case, it took you down other roads that ended up you started another podcast based on things that you found while investigating the Melissa Witt case. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I unexpectedly, a couple of years ago, received a tip from a woman from the Virgin Islands who basically said that she had been involved in making a death fetish movie, and where she was asked to pretend to be dead and that she had been strangled and she was wearing this Mickey Mouse watch. And of course, that set off all kinds of red flags for us because Melissa Witt was strangled and she had been wearing a Mickey Mouse watch that had gotten stolen during the course of the murder. And this was interesting. And so we'd never received a tip like that. So we dived in head first because it needed to be explored. And in the middle of that is when I discovered this horrific world called death fetish. And basically, it's death fetish pornography are movies, films, still pictures, stories where it's primarily men. I'm sorry, Robert, I'm not picking on you. It's just
No.
primarily men that glorify the murder of young women. And that really led to us having to find out who the producer was, who did he make the movie for, and I went undercover in the death fetish forums for over a year to gather the information, and that was a horrific experience, but because of that, we launched a podcast called Deep Dark Secrets, and we spent an entire season, almost an entire year, just exposing death fetish producers and these online forums, and I'm proud to say that we've seen death fetish forums, they've closed up shop and gone running because they don't want Deep Dark Secrets to come knocking on their door. We've seen 3 different people arrested. It's been a very worthwhile venture, and what I love about it the most is that something really good came out of Melissa Witt's death, because had it not been for Melissa, we wouldn't have gone down this path, and I know this is gonna sound dramatic, but it's true. Because of the work that we've done through Deep Dark Secrets, we've actually saved almost 7 I guess it's 8 women's lives. That's a big deal to me, and that's Melissa. I really feel like that's all because of Melissa.
Wow, that is
And
a really big deal for sure.
yeah,
It
it's
is,
very
and
it gives a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Knowing that yes, she lost her life, but things came out of that that have been able to save other people. It's very I don't want gratifying, I guess.
it helps make this work, and I'm just talking about advocacy work in general, more rewarding. It makes it easier to sleep at night because some good is happening out of some really awful things. And I personally struggle with the fact that Melissa was murdered. It's just one of those things that I have a hard time with. And so any good that can be done in her name, I think that's phenomenal.
Yep, absolutely.
What would you say was so you mentioned earlier about the documentary that you made for her about her story. What was that process like? Even just producing it, creating it, making it come to life. Can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, it was honestly the hardest thing I've ever done because making a lot of what I do, and I think Lexi, you probably know this about me by now, is that I'll decide I
Mhm.
want to do something and then I'm going to do it no
Oh,
matter
you
what.
do.
I'm gonna figure it out, and to make an independent film is this huge endeavor because it's all on you. You've gotta come up with the funding, you've gotta write the scripts, you've gotta find the camera people, you've got to do all the things, and yeah, it was stressful. It took us 8 years. COVID happened during all of that, so that really impacted our schedule. I learned so much about myself. I learned a lot about filmmaking, and it's definitely something I wanna do again. 'Cause I go back and watch the film and see, "Oh, I could have done this better." oh, I should have done this. But now that I know how to do it, there's no stopping me. Like, I'm going to make more films. So I'm excited about that. And I think that the biggest thing that I walked away from that experience is that, you know, people are weird. I'm just going to be honest. It's just
No, they are.
we didn't have the participation of some people that I thought we would. Other people, it was a weird experience, and I felt let down in a way that I wish there was more involvement from people who had known Melissa personally, but I think it was just
Yeah.
too difficult for them. And I think I also learned that there's a lot of responsibility you have with putting out a film or a book or anything when you're writing about somebody else, especially somebody that's been murdered. And I struggled. I wanted to make sure that we found the balance. I didn't want this to be murder porn. I didn't want
Yeah.
people to turn on the movie and it be so sensational about all the things. I wanted people to walk away and think about this innocent 19-year-old girl who was stolen away from us and murdered. And know that there were quite a few suspects and this is what it looked like and it's still unsolved. That was really our goal. And I think we achieved that, but it was a big responsibility that, we lost a lot of sleep over because we wanted to make sure the script was exactly the way it was supposed to be.
And I can say that you accomplished those things from the moment you guys, because I was there when you premiered it in Northwest Arkansas, and I walked out of the room going, "Wow, that was amazing." I really did.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure how it would be received. I honestly thought people would have to watch it because we premiered it at True Crime Fest, and then I thought, "We'll put it on YouTube and maybe 100 people will see it," and that's just not what happened. I'm still when I talk about it or think about it, I'm like, "Did that really happen? Did that many people really watch the film?" Because that was more than I could have ever right now, we're sitting at over 7,000,000 people that have watched it. 7,000,000 people watched
That's a
Melissa's.
lot of people.
It is a
Yep.
lot of people. It's I'm so proud of that. Like, I could hang up my hat today and say, "I did what I could, girl. I did what I
Yeah,
could." But it
that's
is something
amazing.
that I'm really proud of, and I think that we've got 3 more films on the horizon that we're working on, and I think some really cool stuff's gonna come out of that, so I'm excited.
Are you gonna get
Can you
permits this time for the forest?
I am going to get every permit that I'm supposed to get, darn it. That was another thing. There's just so much. Most films have this crew there's all these people that are taking care of different aspects of the job, and we didn't have that. Now, in my subsequent films, I've got great crew. I've got lots of people, lots of eyes looking at things. Did not do that and made some mistakes in the Witt case, so will not make those again.
At least they had to watch it to be able to fine you. Does that make sense? They had to actually
Yeah.
watch it and say, "Look, you filmed there, so now you've gotta pay us whatever the fee is to film in the woods," which still doesn't just blows my mind.
I know, it's the craziest thing, but and I so we learned all of those kind of lessons, but we also learned a lot about the film industry too while we were at
Mhm.
it, and me being me, immediately noticed that there's a lot of gaps in what stories are told in documentary form, and I wanna change that. It can't always be these big sensational cases that make it to Netflix or Hulu, okay? Every case is equal. We're
Mhm.
all human, every life is equal, and I wanna be able to prove that independent filmmakers can put together a film and get it on a platform like Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu. You really can do that, and it should happen because you could showcase more stories, and with the way that things are trending in the true crime genre, people are hungry for content, right? It's just
Mhm.
human nature, they're hungry for it. So we should be responsible for generating good content, and independent filmmakers can do that, and I hope that I can help change that.
And I
Yeah, and
think that's Go ahead, Lexi. You go.
I was just gonna say, I think too that there's a way to do it where people may choose to watch because they're like, oh, this story, and maybe they're interested from a more sensationalism perspective. But once they're watching it, hopefully they'll feel the heart and the compassion and the work that goes into working these cases and advocating for them and the families and all of that, and hopefully it causes them to have a change of heart in how they interact with true crime moving forward. And that may not even be their intent of why they were watching it, but that could be something they get out of it
Uh,
afterwards.
yeah, I hope so. You don't have to you've seen our film. It's not
Mhm.
we relied heavily on news footage, which I think is important to tell the backstory when you weren't
Mhm.
there. We didn't have millions of dollars to put the film together. That is obvious, but I think that we were really solid in the narrative that we weaved and the way we did our camera work. And so I think that helped the film tremendously. Um, if we had $1 million budget, it would have been a better film, but we don't. And what I want people to understand is you don't need that kind of budget to tell a good story.
Yeah, and
I
I think
uh,
too in Hollywood in general, or just movie making in general, there's a pressure that's like you need all this money to make this film so it can go to Netflix and Hulu and all these other places, but that's not always the case. But go ahead, Robert.
I was gonna say, I think that you would be surprised, LaDonna, that people that watch it would not know, 1, that it was your first documentary. I think that would be surprising to you, and 2, that they wouldn't realize that you didn't have a larger budget than you did, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, that's
Because because
flattering. Thank
yeah, because it's so well done, and we'll link that into the show notes so everybody can go take a look at it as well, and we'll put that and also obviously the your book links and the podcast stuff in our show notes. But I think when people watch it, I don't think people come away from it with, "Oh, wow, that was the first one she ever did. That wasn't well done," or what. I think when you come away from it, it's like I said, when I was floored when I watched it because I was expecting less. Does that make sense? I was
Oh,
expecting because it was your first time doing this, and I knew that you didn't have a huge budget. I was thinking, "Okay, it's gonna be this 5 to 10-minute documentary about her story," and it was so well put together. I was like, "Okay, she did a great job."
thank you. I appreciate that. I think some people were shocked that the doc wasn't centered on me. I have a small cameo in the doc in the Ozark National Forest scene when we're getting out of the car with the detectives. You see me for just a second, and that was an accident because I really didn't even want to be in the film because it wasn't about me. I wanted all the focus to be on Melissa, and so I am proud of it. I'm not at all ashamed of the work, or we would have never released it. It was just we did what we could with what we had, and we spent a lot of time on it. And just a fun fact about the film, much of the footage that you will see that was in the Ozark National Forest and some of the other footage was taken from my Suburban that I had at the time with the sunroof open with the cameraman standing out and we filmed it that way. And we get people ask us a lot, "How'd you get that shot?" Oh, my Red Thunder is what I called her, Red
That's
Thunder for my
awesome.
Suburban, so, anyway, just a fun little fact to share with your listeners.
And like I said, people wouldn't have known that had you not, because they would have thought that you had a production of whatever it takes to get a scene driving through the forest.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's some of it too with the independent filmmaking is you have to be a little bit more creative to make your money last as long as you're able to make it last and get the shots the way you need to and all of that. Which and I think it makes it more exciting that way too because then it's like when you do more of these in the future you have different ideas of how you can get the shots that you need, new ideas and such and it makes it more like exciting, I think.
I think so too, and we spent a bulk of our money on those drone shots that we got. We got some really I don't know if I can say badass on your show, but
You
You
can,
I'll
can.
yes.
whisper I'll whisper it, "Badass." We got some really great shots with the drone, I was really proud of those, and we didn't go buy footage. A lot of people will go buy stock footage and drop it into their film, and we did not do that. We either used news footage or good old-fashioned hard work that we had done ourselves, and so that's another thing that I'm proud of. But I'll also say for other people who are interested And putting on a film like that of a case that's 30 years old, it's hard to get good footage and to even get news footage, because when you write your narrative, you write the script, you have to be able to visually present that to an audience, right? So you have to make sure the script, you've got the visuals to go with the script. And that was probably a very difficult part for us, because we'd have to continue to rewrite it because we were so limited on what visuals we could get.
It's very hard, especially going back. I would say the case we did a few weeks ago was 25 years old, and there's really nothing out there. Even news articles, there wasn't a ton. There were tons of newspaper articles, but that doesn't translate well when you're trying to tell a story.
No, it's difficult, and we got lucky because the news station here cooperated fully with us and let us use their footage, right? We didn't have
Mhm.
to license that. They allowed us to do it. And so then there's licensing that you have to consider. There were some things I would have liked to have included, like about one of the suspects, Larry Ray Swearingen, but we couldn't get the information and get the releases to be able to do it. So there was the legal aspect. We had to hire an attorney. There was all the things. It was a lot to manage for a small crew, and there were only 4 of us. We started with 11 and we wound up with 4. It
Wow.
was
Wow.
the last 4 standing, but we did it.
I will say what's interesting too, and it's quite inspiring, is the your relationship with the retired detectives and even the current ones working the case, but specifically the retired ones on the case. I feel like that's such a unique insight to things, whereas a lot of people who may be working on their own cases may not have that level of access.
Yes, it's definitely a unique situation, and I did not have this kind of access to begin with. Like, when JC Ryder, he was the original lead detective on Melissa's case, and I first met, we looked at each other, "Who are you?" "Yeah, who are you?" That was, like, the attitude, and I was scared of him.
Mhm.
And really what kinda changed things is that I was like that persistent gnat that's flying around your head that won't go away, but I kept having all these questions for him and texting him, and then when I was able to turn up some information that was really interesting to them, because I called him one night and said, "Hey, this guy's been calling me. Do you know who he is?" And when I told him, you could have heard a pin drop. He said, "Where'd you get that name at?"
Mm.
And I said, "He's been calling me," and he said, "We need to see you in Fort Smith tomorrow. You gotta tell me everything." And so, ended up going to Fort Smith and finding out that this was their suspect. This was the guy. And he hadn't talked to them because he had lawyered up, but he wanted to talk to me. He was trying to insert himself into my film. And so that's how that got started, and then it became, like, valuable to them
Mhm.
because it was.
They needed you.
Yes. And then that allowed me to build a relationship with them, and then they saw they could trust me. I know things about that case file that I'll never say, because it's more important to me that Melissa's case gets solved than I go run my mouth about what I've seen. And they just don't see that a whole lot. And so JC, he's going to shoot me if I say this, so hopefully he'll never hear this interview, but he's like a dad to me. He really
Mhm.
is. And that's seriously going to make him mad. But we are that close. He just texted me like 30 minutes ago. And so
Mhm.
I'm proud of that relationship because it's like another gift from Melissa. And we do good work together. And he wants to see that case solved before he takes his last breath. And I'm determined to help him make sure that happens.
Have you had the same cooperation with the current investigators? Do you feel pretty
Yes.
good about that relationship?
Yeah. I know all of the men and women who have worked Melissa's case. I have a relationship with most of them. The current lead detective is Brad Marion, and I have a lot of respect for him. He and I talk not as frequently as I do with JC, but we do communicate. One of the things what happens now is that I receive most of the tips because of the Facebook page and my work and the tip
Mhm.
line. But my agreement is that I turn all those over to I vet them, I log them, and I turn them over to law enforcement. And so, I do talk to him about those tips. Um, I probably nag him too. "Have you followed up on this? What do you think about this? What are we gonna do about this?" And he always says, "Humphrey, you keep me on my toes," or I see my phone rings and it's Humphrey and I know it's gonna be a 30-minute call. But so we joke around, but he also knows that business about getting this case solved, and I know he means business about it too. So, it's a good relationship.
And that's important, and I think that's what happens a lot of times is they get so many calls of people just wanting to talk about the case for a short period of time to get as much information as they can and then walk away. I think when you're as invested as they are, maybe you may be even a little bit more invested than they are, just to keep them on their toes is important.
I think so, and I'm in a really unique position because I have read the case file, I know the case file, I've worked the case for 10 years. I Um, I'm one of the few people who's talked to all of the suspects. Some of them have died, but I've communicated with all of them at some point. And so when a new investigator does come on, like Brad when he was new, they call us in to consult with him because there's a lot of it's like an information dump. And because we know the file so well, when something comes in, he can reach out to us. Hey, what do you know about that? Or they'll say, hey, did Humphrey work this lead? What has Humphrey got? And so that's been something that I've been able to contribute, and he doesn't really need that as much now, he's very up to speed, but in the beginning, that's what it was like, and they would tease me because they would say, "I don't know, ask her what's on page 800, second paragraph of the notebook for, because I promise you Humphrey will know," and they're right. But that what started out as a joke has just turned into just a great working relationship.
That's awesome. That's great. So as we progress into everything that you've got going on, which is a ton. Let's talk about True Crime Fest Northwest Arkansas.
That's my baby.
Yes.
It is. So everything that we do is very strategic to do in the honor of Melissa. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is put on some sort of conference or festival. And it's very iffy to call anything true crime festive. Okay. And so I recognize that. But the idea of True Crime Fest was really to be able to draw that group of people who are obsessed with true crime, who are interested in advocacy, all the things, and be able to bring them into a reputable event who is not going to glorify murderers. They're not going to sensationalize the cases. They're going to present good, solid, accurate information with a focus on advocacy. Like, this is the case we're looking at this year. And so that was what we wanted to do. I've been involved in CrimeCon, I've been involved in other true crime events. And so the whole goal was to launch this as a fundraiser for our nonprofit. And we thought maybe 100 people. I don't know why I'm stuck on 100 people, but that's always what I guess. Okay. That's weird. But we
It's a
thought
good
maybe
number.
I know, but I always do this, and we were shocked when we had hundreds of people knocking down the door to attend. So I think it's a worthy event, and I think it too brings some responsibility, but that's really our goal is to be responsible with the information that we share and with the speakers that we invite and with just how we execute the event. It's important for us to put on a first class event that offers first class information on behalf of these families because they deserve nothing less.
And that's how I felt being there. I felt that it was a good close-knit event that brought in good people that were heavy on the advocacy side and not so much on the entertainment side, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, and there is a fine line of, is this entertainment? To some degree, there's always gonna be those true crime fans that are they wanna be entertained, but I was asked this question at a panel that I sat in a few months ago, and "What responsibility do you feel as a creator to make sure that you're not entertaining the masses?" And I said, "That's a fair question, and I'll answer it as soon as you tell me what responsibility the consumer has on consuming information that's not entertainment." And the whole room went silent. They were like, "Oh, that's interesting." Because it is interesting, because there is a certain level of things that content creators should be responsible for. And it's not entertaining. It's sharing information in a responsible way that honors the victim and does not glorify the murderer. But I also think that we have to turn it back on the people who are consuming the content too. They have a responsibility too. Because you can shut down those folks who are out there for the wrong reasons if you stop consuming their ridiculousness,
And
right?
I think that's the problem is that you've got more people that are looking at it as an entertainment source than they're looking at it as an advocacy source. So they're the ones, these podcasts that are questionable. There's a few in my mind that are questionable that continue to build off of drama and sensational. How do you say it?
Sensationalism?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sensationalism. They build off of that and continue to do it because it's making them money. And I think that's where the problem comes in is I would say that the majority of podcasters are in it for advocacy and the love of doing it. And then you've got the few that cause most of the issues because they're in it for the drama or the money.
Oh, well, yeah, the money. It's big bit true crime is big business. It really is. And that's why we approach things differently. From a personal standpoint, I don't make any money off the books that I write. Those go back into the case. The first book, The Girl I Never Knew, that goes back into Melissa's case. That's how I buy the billboards or I put up the reward or I do all the things. And so that's important to me that I do that. Strangled is different. That's more of Alicia Lockhart's story, and I don't take any proceeds from that book at all. That goes to her, and it goes to whatever percentage to the publisher. And so that's how I approach it. Same thing with the film. Obviously, it has to go back and pay for expenses. And because All the Lost Girls, my nonprofit, is involved, if there is ever going to be an excess of funding from the movie after we've paid for everything that we can for Melissa, it would just go to other cases. We're not there yet, but I dream that there'll be a day that it's like that. Same thing with the podcast. Deep Dark Secrets does really well in terms of where we're at. We've grown a lot, but any money we would make, it goes into really honestly back into production, what little production costs we have. And it goes into advocacy work because we do a lot of advocacy work for Deep Dark Secrets.
So talk about your second season of Deep Dark Secrets, where your focus is right now, and talk about Amy and talk about that.
So Amy Smith is my co-host and partner in crime, is what I like to say. We've been friends for, oh my gosh, a couple of decades now. And we've been on a lot of journeys together and really excited that she's my co-host. She and I are co-founders of All the Lost Girls, co-founders of True Crime Fest. And so we do a lot of work together. But this season we're focusing on human trafficking, and that's been a real interesting season. We've really seen our numbers jump. There's a lot of people interested in knowing about human trafficking, and we're doing some deep dive investigation into child sex trafficking from the 70s and 80s and really trying to expose some of that and help people to see how this network kind of then bleeds over to the 90s, the 2000s, and all the things, and how really connected these pedophiles are. I don't think people understand that. And it's been interesting. It's been a relief to be away from death fetish for a little bit. That's a pretty heavy topic. Not that human trafficking isn't. So, our third season will go into domestic violence issues. So, I'm super excited about that too, because that's something close to my heart that I deal with in my real job with sober living. So, yeah, we're really plugging along in our second season, and we're learning a lot and meeting a lot of other great podcasters like yourselves. And so that makes the journey fun.
Absolutely. And then you've got a second podcast out now, right?
I do. It's called Extinguished, and that's with David McClam. And I enjoy that. We do things a little differently. We cover one case over 4 episodes. and we talk about the missing or the murdered and really try to shine a spotlight on those cases. And we've covered all kinds of cases so far, and I really like spending that 4-week time period on a case. It gives us a lot more time to research. We can share more in-depth information with our listeners, and we were able to spotlight on a case for a month, and that means a lot to a family to have that much coverage. So I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to see where Extinguished goes. We were part of Murder in the 21st television show on A&E this year, and so we plan to do some more of that, and that was pretty cool, a lot of fun. Yeah, anything we can do to spread the word for these cases, I definitely want to do. But I'm about maxed out on true crime projects. So
No way.
What do you mean?
there's no more capacity. I'm an old woman, guys. I turned 50 in August and I have to slow down a little bit.
No, you're just getting started.
We'll see. I say that, and then it'll probably be like me
There'll
texting
be
Lexi
something.
next week and saying, "Okay, I got this project. Let's get
And I'm
started."
like, okay, let's
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
it. Sign me up.
We're gonna pull you in some too, Robert. So just you wait. You're next.
I'm ready. Just let me know.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of capacity.
Well,
I'll always
we
have capacity. I'll make it work.
Yep.
I have to say that Lexi, when I first met her, just she had so much drive and energy and interest around the wit case, but my heart melted because my oldest daughter's name is Lexi too. And it's so funny, there have been several times that I've called up my daughter and accidentally called this Lexi and just started talking, like, not even hello, and she'll be like,
Yeah, like
"I
I got Lana
know,
Del Rey tickets, and I was like, oh.
I thought you have the wrong Lexi."
When are
So
we going? When are we going?
Yeah, let me just book a flight.
yeah, I was so excited when I got those tickets that I called the wrong
As you
Lexi,
should be.
Yeah,
but,
very much.
I remember when I one of the first times I'd heard about Lexi is that I was standing in the police department in the conference room, and somebody said, "Yeah, so and so filed an FOIA on the Witt case." And I said, "Really? Now who did that?" And I was being funny, but I was also interested, and they gave her name, or this her first name, and I was like, "Huh, interesting." And then I think either you had already emailed me or emailed me shortly after that,
Something like
and,
that, yeah.
it all came together, but I loved just this deep dive that she was doing into the case, and then when I met her, I was like, "Yeah, this girl's the real deal. Like, I've gotta work with her."
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to work together on other stuff. Some things to come, but it's been really fun to work together, to partner on things, to figure things out. Like, it's so much fun.
I've been so appreciative of for both of you, and this goes for both of you, it's just the support that you've shown me as a podcaster, as an author, as the things that I'm doing in the Wit case, because that is so rare. I was telling Lexi today, I think we were talking about just the amount of contact that I get because of the
Mhm.
film or the books, and it's not all positive. I have myself a little group of haters, and that's hard. That's really hard. So it's really
Yeah,
great when you get people that are supportive. So
for sure.
Well,
Thank you.
th
Go for
go
it,
ahead.
Robert.
Nope, you go.
Okay, I was going to say, I think I really believe in the idea that we can all succeed. We don't have to compete because there is a lot of that already exists in the true crime space. And I feel like if you spend all of your time competing, you're not really getting anything done, which might not be a profound idea necessarily, but it's so much easier to just do the work and collaborate and see what happens. And it's more
yeah.
meaningful, I think, that way. So,
I
You're
agree,
right.
and I don't compete. I'm not in
yeah.
it to compete. I was having a conversation with somebody from CrimeCon about a week ago, and he said to me, he said, "So what are you working on now? Because you're doing all the things." And he said, "I just you've done a book and you've done a podcast and you've got a film and all the things." And he said, "What I think is interesting is that you're not paying attention to what other people are doing because you're too busy doing your own thing." And I said, "Yes, we all need to be too busy doing our own thing with these cases because it doesn't matter to me what other people are doing. Now, it matters to me in terms of I'm going to be their cheerleader. I want to be the first person to stand up and say, 'Woohoo, I'm on your keep going, do great work.'"
Hmm.
But I don't really care to see it as competition, because the minute you see a case as competition, you've lost sight of the goal. You've lost sight of what's important, and I'm just not ever gonna
Absolutely.
participate in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly, you both took all everything I was gonna say and summed it up because, that to me, it's the most important thing is to support everyone you can, no matter if they've been doing this for 10 years or if they've been doing it for 1 month, and to help and grow every person's podcast because to me that they're when they're doing it for the right reasons, there's no reason why there's nobody that should be hating on a person for doing things for the right reason.
I agree, and I will say something too that you might think is a little radical, but I really do believe this. There are troublemakers out there in the true crime space. So there's troublemakers in any space. But
Hmm.
what I love to do personally, because I think that there's a responsibility for having any type of leadership role, and we're all leaders. If you got a podcast, you're a leader, you've got a platform. Yeah, same thing if you're an author or a filmmaker. And so I always make sure that every now and then I'm reaching out to some of those troublemakers and I'm saying, "Hey, I tuned into your podcast, or I read your book, or let's talk. How can I help you affect change?" And try to be positive to help maybe redirect them. I think that's important. Not everybody would agree with me, but I do it. And I think that's the only way that we're going to see change, is because you will do better if you know better. And you can't
Yeah.
just assume that people know better. You have to teach them. And so I'm trying to mentor a few people into doing the right thing. So we'll see how that works out. That might be a podcast.
I kill 'em I kill 'em with kindness. I talk to them, and, there's a couple that I feel the same way, that really need that extra push to make sure they're doing the right things all the time, not just some of the time
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's
Well,
convenient.
we're all human, right? We're
Mhm.
all gonna make our mistakes. We're all gonna have our turn in the hot seat. We're all gonna have our turn of being hated or loved or whatever the things. But at the end of the day, we're all human and should treat each other as such, because that's how you affect change. There's a story that I read about this African village, and when anybody makes a mistake in this village, they bring him into the center of the village, and the whole everybody else stands around them, and this goes on for 3 days, and all they do is talk about all the positive things this person has done. They don't focus on the bad thing. They really try to lift them up with all the good things they've done, and I love that story because that is so important for humans to be able to say, "Despite this mistake I've made, these are all the good things I've done. I can turn it around," because any of us can turn it around tomorrow if they want to, and I think for the podcasters and authors and anybody else that has a platform that's on the wayward path, on the entertainment path, the best thing the rest of us could do is to try to gently push them to use that platform for good. And I think it's possible. I'm not so naive to think that everybody would change, but I think it's worth the effort.
If you change one, you've made a big impact.
Yeah, I think so. That is something that I take pretty seriously, and I like to build relationships and connect people, and I try to do that in the true crime world too. So we'll see how that
Yeah.
continues to work out.
I think it's
Absolutely.
important too because I sometimes you never know how that connection could help further a case or what new information could come from that connection. Like it is important to do those things as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I love being able to connect people together and like promote good people. I just think that's important. And that's why places like True Crime Fest are so important. And even bigger venues, there are going to be plenty of people who are going to say that they don't like Crime Con. I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to get, "Oh, I don't attend that event," but lots of people do. Lots of people do. And
Mhm.
that's a great platform to meet people. And I've had nothing but good experiences at Crime Con. Yeah. So connecting those
Me as
dots.
well.
Yeah. So I will continue to participate with them. I have made some great relationships out of that, and but I use that as an example because you and I both know that there are people who are going to say, "I would never go to Crime Con. I'm never going to do that." Why? You can take any experience and make it good. And I think
Yeah.
it's important. And for me, that's where a lot of resources are for cases. And
Yeah.
so I feel like it's important to be there and to network and I will continue to do that.
Yeah, and I
And
think
same,
too,
same.
even in Orlando, they were granted by no means was it a perfect display of advocacy or anything like that, but I think sometimes you have to meet people where they are at, and it might not be a sweeping change overnight, but little by little, I think by having those conversations and that open dialogue, it helps to hopefully make it an event one day where there is a more advocacy or people who feel like there isn't enough of it. They feel like they can participate because they see that ad advocacy in the way that they prefer or that they represent can exist there too.
Yeah, I think so too. And like it or not, CrimeCon basically launched my career as an author because that's
Mhm.
where The Girl I Never Knew launched. I still think about CrimeCon Vegas, and that was just wild. That was one wild ride, just
It
being there
was.
and participating in that. And so I'm really grateful for that and for the relationships I've built with their team. They've got so many really great people, good-hearted people that want to make a difference in this industry and for victims and their families. And so I think that gets lost in it a lot. I think people just forget to see the heart behind it.
And I think
Yeah.
so. I think a lot of times every event is what you put into it and what you take out of it. So if you go into it with a negative connotation, you're gonna come out of it with a negative connotation. But if you go into it and there's so many things going on there. Yeah, some of them may be a little outside of what you're comfortable with, but there's so many things that are in that comfort zone for each individual person that they don't make you go to every single thing there. You don't have to touch every single booth. You don't have to talk to every single person there.
Well,
You can pick and choose your environment, and it is what you make it.
I think what you said, like going to a crime con, it's the same thing, honestly. It is being on Facebook and scrolling through, and you see something that someone posted that you don't agree with. Guess what you can do? You can just keep on scrolling.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
you don't even have to comment. Just keep on scrolling. And that's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's exactly what you said. There is so much for everybody. And there are definitely things about any event that people aren't going to, you can't please everybody. But the heart that goes into that event is pretty phenomenal. And so I really will continue to hopefully, if I keep getting invited, I'm going to keep going. I enjoy that. And I enjoy making those connections. And what I want to do is help other struggling independent filmmakers. That's really something I'm passionate about, and authors be able to get to that next level of telling those stories because those are so important, I think. And I'm also excited to see what happens when I move on outside of the Wit case. I think that's going to be an interesting leap for me to take and to see how people react to that. I'm interested to see what that's going to be like.
It has to be a little intimidating for you.
Yeah, because I don't want people to think that I have forgotten the Wit case because that's never, I'm still going to be as involved as I ever have been. But when the book comes out and you read that last chapter, you'll see that I'm kind of, it's saying goodbye to an era almost. Like I've done all I can accomplish to bring awareness to the case. I know I've given it my all and then some. Yeah, but I also wanna introduce the idea that there's other things I'm gonna do. There's another case I'm taking on, and I'm gonna take on that case with as much zeal as I did the Wit case, and I'm getting emotional just talking about it, like, I can hardly form a sentence right now. Because it is so hard to say goodbye to something that you know the next natural step is that case has to be solved because there isn't anything else that you can do as an advocate. Like, there isn't
Mhm.
anything else I can do. And to get to that point is really something I'm struggling with because I'm the girl that's always filled with ideas. We'll just do this. Okay, nope, we'll write a book. Nope, nope. Okay, let's do a behind the scenes documentary. You're like thinking of all these things I could do, but in reality, I've gifted that case, I think, all that I can. And I don't know, a lot big emotion around that.
I'll say it like this, there's other victims that deserve LaDonna.
Oh, that was
Yes.
nice of you to say. I appreciate that. And I believe that Melissa would want that.
Mhm.
And so the next natural progression for me is there are names that were in Melissa Witt's case file, and that'll be the next. It'll still be because of Melissa, but because of I learned about it because of Melissa's case, that's the next step for me. And yeah, I'm stepping into it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If I
Hmm.
don't do it, then people are going to say you're just trying to make money off Melissa's case. If I then go ahead and step out and do something else for another case, they're going to say, "Oh, see, she's just doing it for the attention." You just can't win. I
Yeah.
was reading one of my hate emails today. Like, I was surprised they hated me as much as they do. I was like, "Wow, that's some serious hate." I offered to pay for their counseling. That was my response.
That's
Um,
funny.
but that I struggle with that because I know my heart and I keep a close group of people to me that are my people. And Lexi's one of them. Robert, you're one of them. That I would be able to share that, and I feel like
Hmm.
so I have to
Yeah.
let the rest of the world I have to tune it out. It's
Yeah.
noise.
It doesn't matter what you do or how good you are, or no matter what you do, there's going to be those people that automatically take the negative route and are a- are just they're just hurtful and mean people that want to not shine in the world, and they want to make everything dark and bleak. So they're going to take it out on whoever they can, whenever they can. If it's not you, it's me, it's Lexi, it's somebody else. They're going to be beating us up for something. So you just got to take that
Yeah.
with a grain of salt and do like you said, offer to pay for their therapy and move on.
Yeah, no, truly. And I believe that I have built a group of people that are around me that we have mutual respect and love for each other, and we want to see good things. And that if I'm wayward in any decision I make in this genre, in this work, that they're going to tell me, they're going to snap
Hmm.
me back into reality. And that's what I want. I want accountability, but I'm not going to take accountability or take the word of a keyboard warrior who's going to insult me on the way I look or the way I talk or second guess me, because if you've not written a book and you've not put out a film, you have no idea what it's like to put yourself out there.
Exactly. They did a fraction of the research alone. Not even the book, not even the documentary. Just like to know what you have to go through to when you get a tip, like what that process is. Like that's not an easy process. There's a lot of research and digging and all that's involved in it. So it's very easy to say, "Oh, you didn't do this right," to make comments, but I would I like to think that they would have a very different opinion if they were the one who doing it day in and day out the way that you have for all this time.
I think so. And then to get the amount of I get true legitimate death threats, like legitimate ones, like we have to call police. And
That is crazy to me.
that's there's you make enemies in this work, in this line of work. And it's I do try to write about it and talk about it with people that are excuse me, closer to me, but I don't think people understand. Like the amount of hate that I get now because of the film is ridiculous. Like I've been told I'm a talentless hack. I've been told just ridiculous stuff. And it's if you don't like the film, that's okay. Just turn it off. Go watch
Yeah.
Dateline if that's what you want to watch or whatever. But you don't need to take the time to look me up on social media and tell me that you hope I die a slow and painful death. People are just, it's like I said earlier, people are just weird. It's been a
Yeah.
really weird journey.
I
Yeah,
think
and I
that
think go for it, Robert.
okay, I think some of that's rooted into I think that is fallout from season 1 of your podcast, honestly.
Oh, probably because of,
Because of the things that you went into, the things you exposed, and the people that you've put on what's the word? Put on blast in
yeah.
that podcast, and I bet you that if you rooted all of that hate down, it's probably gonna be 4 or 5 keyboard warriors that have 30 different accounts that are just
Mhm.
sending dumb things to you all the time.
I think you're right. And one of them, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but
Yeah.
one of them was a what I call a fetisher. And I didn't like the email I got. So I'm friends with the cybercrimes unit. I got lots of friends. And we were able to track that down, right? So
Mhm.
I tracked him down and he's an attorney in Canada. And I called him. His secretary answered, and I said, I need to speak to so and so. And I said, he's busy. I said, tell him Ladonna Humphrey's on the phone. And she said, but I said, tell him that I'm on the phone. And because I knew he would know who I was. And so, of course, he gets on the phone and he said, how did you find me?
Yeah.
And I said, you've been making these threats. So I wanted just to reach out and shake your hand. I said, does your wife know that you're a fetisher? And does your Rotary Club know since you're the president of it? And he said, no. And I said, okay, I guess we know a lot about each other, don't we? And he
Yep.
said, I will never bother you again. I said, okay, then my work here is done.
Yeah.
And he didn't. It's not like that with everybody. You can't track all of them down. And
Yeah.
that's been hard because they take a lot of low blows that don't have anything to do with the essence of your work. And
Yeah.
as you both know as creators, what you're putting out there is like your life's work. It's what you're doing, it's what you're passionate about. And so to have people insult it or to take the time to write something like that, it's mind blowing to me. I don't think I'll ever understand it. And that's why I want to cheerlead for my friends who are out there doing stuff and make sure that I'm out there writing positive reviews and doing those kind of things. So
It's
Yeah.
amazing to me. It's amazing to me that people have that much time that if they don't like something that they're gonna stop and research to be able to send negative feedback on what they didn't like. I don't listen to it again. I don't watch it again.
Yeah. Just move on.
I move on.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
a lot we live rent free in people's heads, I think, as content creators. So you guys just need to remember that. People get
Yeah.
fixated with the work that we do. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lexi. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think too realistically, if you were standing face to face with them, I don't would they say that? Probably not. That takes a lot of guts to type it, let alone say it to someone's face. So I think it's much easier for them to hide behind a screen and go off because they feel entitled to it. But if they did a fraction of the work that any of us have done in any of our projects, they would probably feel differently about it.
I think so, and I really take this stance on it, okay, as because of the books and because of the film, is this: if somebody doesn't like it, I want them to have the freedom to tell me. If they wanna have a legitimate conversation and say, "Hey, my name's Robert, and I wanna tell you why I don't like this. I wanna talk to you about it." I wanna hear that feedback because that means next time I need to write a better book. I need to make a
Mhm.
better film.
Mhm.
I need to so that is something I take that feedback very seriously if it's done in the right way. Not a keyboard warrior who wants to poke fun of, "I don't like your hair," or what was it? Somebody said, "How do you leave the house because I can't remember what they said. It was something about the color of my eyes. It was really bizarre, and I thought, "That is strange, and I don't
Yeah.
care what you have to say because you're hiding behind a screen name. When you wanna call me up and say, 'Hey, my name is so and so, let's talk,' then I'll talk to you, and I will take you seriously."
And
For
that's
sure.
one of the things I took away from Todd McComas. He told me, he said, "Look at your reviews, look at the feedback." He said, "And take it with a grain of salt, but if it's something that you look at and say, okay, maybe I do need to make a change because of this, then make that change. But if not, just move on and know that they're either not gonna listen to you again or they're gonna make another comment later on about something you did again." So
That's true, and I received a lot of it was scandalous to a lot of people that I wrote about death fetish. It was scandalous that I co-wrote it with somebody who had admitted to being in the death fetish industry. It was just that was a lot of it too. People were like, "You went undercover in the death fetish forums? Oh, for shame." No, no, it's not for shame. I did it to get information in the wet case. So yeah, that was interesting. And people still get shocked about the death fetish stuff, but they like to read it, the book. They're still reading it.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, and they're still listening to the podcast, they're listening to the 1st season, and it pushes you into your 2nd season and then to your 3rd seasons.
yeah, I think so. And I think our second season has been more well received. And we've got so many more downloads, and we really knocked it out of the ballpark the first season. So
It
I've been excited about that.
I don't think the 2nd to me so I listened to them all. The 1st season was sometimes hard to listen to. for me,
Yeah.
just because I'm like, I would listen to it and be like, "People do that?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"How do
Yeah.
where do they even find this at? I don't understand it." I would leave the episode going, "People really do that?" But I think
Yeah.
that the 2nd season is more I think it's more relatable in a, um, what's the word? In a broader group of people. I think that the death fetish is really a small group of people, and I think
Yeah.
human trafficking affects everybody every day in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
And we've worked really hard to make it more relatable. There was a lot of shock and awe with the death fetish, and I'll be the first to admit that the way we tackled some of it was shock and awe
Mhm.
because we scrambled to get that podcast out quickly as a way to protect ourselves because we were getting some serious threats and it was the only thing we could do to combat that. Now I've gone down and taken some of the episodes down, the more shocking ones. We're going to re-record those and make it a little bit more palatable for people because that is a big complaint, like, that it was just so heavy, so when we do human trafficking, Amy and I are very careful to make sure that the episodes that are heavy are really they're shorter. We break them into shorter segments, so it's not so much for people to try to digest, and that seems to be a favorite with people that we're doing right now.
Yep, I like it a lot. And you guys, you and Amy mesh really well together, and I think it's just from knowing each other for so long.
Oh, yeah, so that's the thing is we had this big jump in listeners and all the things because people like the dynamic so much better. And that's not insult at my old co-host at all. She was there for a short amount of time to cover Death Fetish, and that's what we did. And it's just, I think it's like what you said. It's just the benefit that Amy and I have known each other for 2 decades, and we're two of the biggest smartasses that you'll ever meet, and we play off each other a lot, and you've met her in person, you know what she's like,
Mhm.
and I think that makes it fun for us, and so when it's appropriate to have fun or to make a joke, we do that. I was pretty notorious for being the joke teller in season 1 just to be able to cope with the content. There were times that I was like, "We're gonna talk about this? This guy ate this body part. What?"
Mhm.
Yeah.
You live and you learn.
Yep, and it's hard. Finding that gel and that cohesiveness is tough,
Yeah.
especially when you're far apart. We're finally, I think, getting into a good groove, me and Lexi, in it to where we have these conversations now, we flow, as opposed to when we first were, over talking each other and button heads, but I think we're hitting a pretty good groove now.
I think you guys are, and I think that everybody goes through that. I think you just have to find your groove. And I had never done podcasting, and so the first of our episodes of season 1 are a little awkward because it's a little
I think
rough. You
that's
go back and
I
hear
think
them, and
that's
I'm like,
that's
Oh, yeah.
everybody's.
I know. I go back and hear them, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And
Mhm.
so Amy and I are going to re-record all of the Death Fetish year, the first season
Okay.
1. We're going to re-record that and release it as special episodes, and I'm excited to do that because it'll stir some stuff up with the death fetish stuff again, and I'm a pot stirrer. If I can go stir their little death fetishy pot and get some more people arrested, that'd be great, and then we'll move on to other things, but we've got lots of great things on the horizon, and so I'm excited about the direction that Deep Dark Secrets is taking.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with where you're going and how you're getting there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Same to you. But both of you guys do phenomenal work and I enjoy listening to your podcast. So
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. And we're coming up to an hour and a half now, so we will conclude everything. But so, LaDonna, tell us where and when the True Crime Fest Northwest Arkansas will be.
True Crime Fest will be August 2nd and 3rd in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We're holding it at the Fayetteville Town Center. You can find information at truecrimefestnwa.com. And I hope to see everybody there. We're very excited about this event. We'll be making some major announcements over the next 6 weeks.
Awesome. I'm excited to
Exciting.
be there. I think Lexi will be there as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, there's going to be some really cool things happening, and I'm excited. It's going to be a great year. I've got great things happening. I've had some hard things happen. You know, a dear friend of mine in the true crime space passed away, and so that's been hard. But I think overall, 2024 is going to be a great year.
I think for all of us.
I think so
Definitely.
too. Do some great work.
Yes.
Thank you again very much for joining us, and we appreciate you very much. And we will for sure talk to you again soon.
Thank you guys. It was great, and I will be in touch.
Thanks to everyone for joining us this week. We appreciate you and look forward to talking with you guys next week. But before you go, we want to remind you to stay connected with us. Follow us on all of our social media platforms to keep up with the latest updates, behind-the-scene content, and more. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at The Broken System Podcast. And if you want to support the show and get access to exclusive content, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page. Your support helps us to keep the podcast going and growing. Visit patreon.com, search The Broken System Podcast to join our community. Thank you for being a part of the Broken System Podcast family. We'll be back next week with more episodes, and until then, stay safe, stay curious, and keep breaking the system.